Is the NTT INDYCAR Series with live coverage of today's practice. This is INDYCAR Radio.
Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix presented by Lear. Mark James, Davey Hamilton, Joel Sebastianelli, Nick Yeoman set to take you through the final practice session before we go qualifying a little bit later on today. Davey Hamilton, Kyle Kirkwood making headlines yesterday for a couple of reasons. He got a nice boost via the old chrome horn from Will Power yesterday, but also ended up fastest on the day with a time of 61.7509.
Yeah, great run by him, actually, but it's created some great excitement, and I see Will and him talking. I think it's all worked out. I think a lot of drivers have enjoyed it, but there's a sign, actually, I just noticed right outside our booth that says, no standing, parking, or stopping. They need to put that sign over in that same corner right over there, and be aware, tell everybody that when the green's out, you got to go.
Outside of Kyle Kirkwood, of course, this event, very, very important to Penske Entertainment, and their drivers, after a disastrous month of May, have stepped up their game a little bit in that initial practice session, because Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, 2, 3, and 4 on the timing and scoring chart.
Yeah, really, I mean, this track is such a challenge, as we all know, and you never know. Andretti's do have good race cars when it comes to street course. I think they've unloaded fastest at St. Pete, they unloaded fastest at Long Beach, and they really unloaded fastest here. So as difficult as this track is, seems like they have a little bit of a handle on it now. This track is more about not the handling, but more about getting grip coming off these corners, making sure those rear tires do not spin when you accelerate off these flat corners, and then getting your brake bias right to when you go into the corners, it's not locking the brakes up. I think the handling is minimal of what to be faster. I think those are the two things you need to work on.
Grip may be at a premium because Mother Nature has provided drastically different conditions on this Saturday than those we enjoyed on Friday. To get the specifics on the chilly start, let's welcome in Nick Yeoman.
I appreciate that, Mark. I've been doing this long enough to know not to complain, because there are going to be days in July where we're at Iowa or mid-Ohio, maybe Nashville in August, where we're going to be pushing triple digits and we're going to be sweating our rear ends off. That is not the case this morning, though, here on pit lane in Detroit. How about 52 degrees Fahrenheit? The ambient temperature, track temperature, just a tick warmer at 64 degrees Fahrenheit. It is cool down here, and you can see it. All the crew personnel, they've got the jackets on. I've even seen some winter hats. Now, I know it doesn't sound like 52 degrees. It's not like an Arctic down here, but boy, it is a noticeable chill. And I think the other thing that I've noticed is the wind blowing right in my face. I'm on driver's right side of this split pit lane, so it is uncomfortable, it is cold. And Mark, we just wrapped up an Indianapolis practice session about 15-20 minutes ago, where I don't think I have ever seen so many drivers test the runoff areas. So the conditions are very, very tricky. Now you put these Indy cars out of the racetrack faster, more horsepower. I think there's going to be a lot of tiptoeing here in the early portions of this practice session.
If there's any activity at all early on, some may take the wait-and-see approach. Happy to have back with us this weekend. He's now here in Detroit with Local 4 WDIV. He's most recently been in the Toledo market, spent time in Panama City Beach, Florida. Also was part of the Road to Indy Scholarship Program once upon a time, where his career really took off. Been with us for a number of years now. We welcome back in Joel Sebastianelli.
Mark, always a pleasure to be with you guys, and it's nice to see Kyle Kirkwood and Will Power, or as some have taken to calling him on social media, Will Plower, both smiling in their pit stalls this morning. The two of them spoke to each other just about 10 minutes ago after their incident on track yesterday. And Kyle Kirkwood said, look, we're cool. Will told us on the radio and told Kyle Kirkwood he wasn't mad when he got into the back of Kirkwood's car and pushed him for a few seconds through the turns, out of the way, kind of like a commute home on the lodge. He just lost his head for a second, and Kyle kind of laughed when he was telling me this. He said, that's just Will. Kyle couldn't fathom it. He did admit, he didn't think it was right. He expected IndyCar to penalize Will, which has not been done yet. But the car is fine. They were fastest yesterday, and they've raced with each other for long enough that they respect each other, they like each other, and as I said, the two of them were able to smile about it this morning before this second practice session.
Challenge rebound and go up a little bit. But by the same token, I think this session might be important as we're getting ready to go green, because these are going to be conditions very similar to what we'll qualify.
Yeah, I think they're going to really take advantage of this session as the cars are green right now coming out on racetrack, Mark, because you have to qualify in these conditions. Qualifying is so important. It's all about track position, and you want good track position here as we see Plo and Power, the first two on the racetrack.
Well, our booth position couldn't be any closer to the action. We're right at the exit of the pits and essentially the entrance into turn number 1, and we can feel the vibration as they roar by us and set up for turn number 1.
Yeah, no question about it. And these cars that we've seen in Indy Next with Nick and I earlier on, conditions are cool. So what happens? A little more downforce. This heavy air generates a little more downforce in these cars. Actually makes the motors run really well. But it takes a little extra time to get heat in the tires, the track surface, the rubber isn't sticky on there right now. It's kind of hard. So they need to go out there, just take their time. Now, Nick mentioned, I think every single car had an issue in the runoff areas in Indy Next. And I mean, I think every one of them had found that runoff area. So everybody's testing the limits of their cars. I continue to say, it's more about having really good brakes, balance-wise, where when you go in these corners, it's not locking up any tires. And then when you come off these corners, not getting wheel spin, making sure the traction's down, and that's what's going to win the race this weekend.
Well, you know, earlier today, before you guys went on for that Indy Next show, right outside of our booth, we saw Kyle Novak and some other track officials from the Detroit Grand Prix out there looking at essentially what is the blend-in line as they exit the pits. And we are essentially right at the 200-foot mark before the turn. The signage right across from us. They have it on both sides, actually. So we are actually in the primary entrance point, I'm assuming, to turn number 1. And it's going to get tricky if we have green flag pit stops. This may be an area that we see have a bird's eye view of where the race is decided.
It's going to be some action right here. And by the way, these teams all have spotters. Normally on roads and streets, sometimes they don't use spotters. But when this exit is so difficult and you need to merge properly, they have spotters. There's a parking garage right behind us, between us and the racetrack. And there's going to be spotters on the very top of that parking garage looking down, trying to help their drivers, whether they're coming out of the pits or on track, to clear them down into turn 1.
Well, you've set up my next point perfectly, because I visited with one of those spotters a few minutes ago, Michael Crawford, who spots for David Malukas at AJ Foyt Racing. And I said, okay, it's a vastly different animal than being on top of the turn 1 area at the Indy 500. So what specifically is your goal and your focus as you're spotting for that parking garage? He said, my job is twofold. I'm a traffic cop for the exit of the pits, he said, but as much as anything else, and it's not going to be easy, I'm trying to find a gap for him so he can go full bore.
Yeah, that's right, and that is not easy. And you know, there's a first car in the runoff area right in front of us down there in the turn 1. Can't tell who that is, but it's already, you know, we're going to see a lot of it happening today.
Looks like one of the Andretti cars.
It does look like one of the Andretti cars, and it is one of the Andretti cars. I can't tell which one.
Looks like Ericsson.
That's Ericsson, yeah, sure is. But it's easy to do, and you can see, well, it's right in front of us, and it's a little bumpy getting into that turn 1. And another thing, that turn 1's blind. When you're going down the straightaway, you cannot see the entry in turn 1. You see the Firestone banners and the Menards banners going down the straightaway, but it looks like it all merges into one. You can't tell where the corner's at, so they'll find their limits. Little tire smoke on a few of these guys, but now is the time to do it. For sure.
We just got a shot from the camera angle right at the apex of turn 1, looking back up the straightaway. In green flag conditions, Davey, these cars upon the approach are actually cutting over to the pit exit lane.
That's right.
Would they maybe hear from race control eventually about that, or will it depend on if there's no cars coming out?
That's right. There's no line right now. We've seen Kyle Novak, race director, out there this morning. And I figured that's what they're probably looking at, is because, like, if you look at Long Beach, you'll see a line that you can't cross over, whether you're on the track or you can't cross over that line coming out of the pits until right there at the corner. And I thought maybe that may be what they're looking at, because right now you come out of the pit lane and straight on the racetrack, and you can really block the guys on the track. So it's a dangerous area right there. Not sure what they're going to do, but right now there's no real rule. or line telling you when you can merge out on the racetrack.
Obviously, heat the tires has a tremendous impact on the overall downforce, but I think what we just saw in turn number 1 with both Ericsson and Award, that this track temperature and the temperature in the tires has a huge impact on your ability to brake.
Yeah, especially right now when it's just chilly out. And as you just mentioned, when you came back in, you go, hey, it's not raining, but I felt just a little mist out there, right? And that's going to happen periodically around this track, depending on where you're at. But you have to get heat. The track doesn't have any heat. I think Joel said earlier on it was like 51, 52, 53 degrees in that area. Very, very cold. And so it takes a little extra time to get heat in these tires before they could really go out and get after it.
Interesting to note discussion we had before we went on the air. I was sharing with you the thoughts of Michael Crawford, the spotter for David Malukas, and I said, do you have anybody in turn 3 as troublesome as that could be? He said, you know, I suggested that a couple of times, and they really felt like that this area going into turn number 1 to the exit of the pits was far more important for a spotter than 1 and 3.
Yeah, and I say it is the most important spot, but I would like to have one. If I'm a driver, I would like to have one in turn 3, just knowing who's behind, because we've seen a lot of carnage in turn 3. I mean, cars stacking into each other, whether somebody trying to come below you, above you. And by the way, you're hanging on. You don't have time to just look in the mirrors. You're in your braking zone. It's very rough down there. Your car's bouncing around. So it would be nice to have a little bit of eye in the sky, as we call the spotters, down in turn 3 as well as turn 1 for sure.
40 minutes remaining in this session. It's been trouble-free except for a couple of visits to some runoff areas around the racetrack. Alex Palou is setting the pace early on. We should make mention again that Kyle Kirkwood was the fastest at a 61.7509. Scott McLaughlin second quick. Then Will Power, Newgarden, Lundgaard, Herta. Then Award, Foster, VK, and Graham Rahal. Nolan Siegel has just jumped to P1. But Davey, the speeds right now, early on in this session, some 6 seconds off of what they were yesterday.
5.5, 6, that's right. It's going to take them a little while, as we talked about. We see McLaughlin in turn 1 right in front of us overshoot that corner. He went off in that runoff as well. No heat in the tires. They don't want to stop good. They don't want to accelerate good. It just takes that extra time to get heat in these tires for sure. So he's really slow on the inside. Ooh, and we see Foster coming around him on the outside, completely sideways right there. About gets into the wall himself. So
anybody going to use alternates in this session?
You know, I think they are allowed. I can't remember.
They are. They can. Yeah, but I just wondered, will they?
Yeah, I think they will. I think somebody is going to put some on. Oh, yeah, because they got 5 sets. So I think somebody will put some on just to really try to prepare for qualifying and get your car as good as possible to try to qualify in front of this field. As we can see, very different. One really good passing zone, and that's really it as far as good passing zones. And so the farther you start up front, the better opportunity you're going to have to win this race.
Well, Will Power, and again, if it's not a passing zone, he makes one by shoving somebody out of the way.
Yeah.
But Will Power said yesterday after the session, he said, you know, I really think the alternates are the tire choice.
Yeah, he really went fast on those alternates, and in these cooler temperatures, that's definitely for sure going to help the degradation of these tires, because the red should last throughout a stint, and I think that's going to be the tire to run throughout the day. Now, definitely for qualifying, it's going to be faster in qualifying, no question about it, than the primary tire. And the way it's looking, Mark, we'll learn more after final practice just how long these alternate tires are going to hang on before they lose too much speed. But right now, I'm kind of picking them to be the primary tire to use.
Alexander Rossi will miss the last 10 minutes of this practice session because he was late to the mandatory weigh-in.
Ooh, yeah, so they're serious about that weigh-in and drivers' meetings and things like that. And what the weigh-in is, Mark, is they try to keep these cars very equal in weight, no matter what size driver you are. For example, you got Santino Ferrucci and Armstrong, very small drivers, don't weigh much. And then you got guys like Graham Rahal and Foster, that bigger guys, and so they don't have to carry as much weight on their cars as Ferrucci and some of the smaller drivers. So I think it's great they do that. Back in the day, they just weighed the car only and not the driver. Fortunately, I was always kind of on the lighter side of the driver, so maybe it was a little bit of an advantage, but you should not have an advantage because of the driver's size.
Well, it goes so far as to where if you don't have that little kind of puck that you see above the driver's head for that camera above the driver's head, if you don't have an in-car camera that weekend, they actually put weight in there that matches that camera.
That matches the camera weight. Yeah, just to try to keep it equal for everybody, and that's one great thing that they do. I really like that. I think it shouldn't matter what size driver you are. You should, all be the same way when you're on track racing.
Kirkwood and Power continue to make headlines. They are P1 and P2 as we see the car of Callum Ilott into the runoff area in turn 1. And I think what we're learning early on is that there is little to no grip on this racetrack.
There's little to no grip, as we talked about it. It just takes, it takes 4 or 5 laps, because what puts heat in tires, Mark, is high-speed corners, and the higher speed corner really lays on that tire. That's what generates a lot of heat. Now, on a track like this, what I try to do sometimes is actually drag the brake down this maybe the long straightaway early on, and what that does, that brake gets that inside of that wheel hot, gets the tire hotter. It slows you down a bit, but you might as well try to get heat any way you can. If you try to do it just organically, this track doesn't have the high-speed corners to really generate the heat quickly.
And if everybody's running primaries right now, which they are, it takes even longer.
It takes even longer, and that's right. And one thing on the long straightaway, Mark, it actually cools the tire down, because you got that cool air hitting the tire, and it's actually cooling the tire down rather than heating it up.
Been a busy week for Alex Palou, the winner of the 109th Indianapolis 500, and earlier this weekend we caught up with Alex Palou and asked him about all that's involved in following the Indianapolis 500 and how exhausting it can be in between the Indy 500 and this race this weekend in Detroit.
It's been a long week so far. Super fun and super, just blessed to be living this opportunity. But it's been a long week, very tired. But we're ready for Detroit, man. It's been a great track for us, for everybody at Chip Ganassi Racing, with Scott winning last year and us winning the first edition. So yeah, it's going to be a tough weekend as always here, with the unpredictability on strategies, tires. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And as tired and as exhausting as it's been for him, he probably will welcome the chance to do it again next year.
He'll be tired and wore out and want to do it time and time again. Nothing like winning the Indy 500, obviously, for him. And that's one thing that he did not have to check off on his list. What a career he's already had. I mean, with the championships, with the wins he's had this year, now Indy 500 win. He's won a lot of racetracks. I mean, this kid's rewriting the record books for sure.
Kind of the most Alex Palou thing in the world to quiet the critics who said he's never won on an oval by making the Indy 500 his first oval.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just mark that one right off the list and making it the biggest race in the world. So got that marked off. But he doesn't want to stop at that oval. He wants to win other ones as well. These short ovals that we go to, the ovals that we go to are pretty technical. So you go to Iowa, 7/8 mile. As we know, really fast, low on grip with the rules that we have right now, hard to drive. Milwaukee, it's always been tough, really flat back, 50 years ago when they raced on it was a hard racetrack because it's so flat, hard to get the traction there. And then we go to St. Louis where 2 corners completely opposite, really fast mile in the corner, but you shift down 2, sometimes 3 gears down into turn 1, but then you're flat out through 3 and 4. So and then Nashville, I think that's probably the easiest one we go to. It's more, but it's concrete, and so all of them are pretty challenging that we go to nowadays.
Nick Yeoman, there's a driver right now who's P2, a rookie of the NTT IndyCar Series. We're very familiar with, covering Indy Next, presented by Firestone. He's off to a pretty good start this weekend after what I think was a pretty positive month of May. I'm talking about Louis Foster, that 45 machine for Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing.
Yeah, and he's got some experience here in Detroit. He actually won the Indy Next by Firestone race here a year ago, and I think you're absolutely right. Had a very good month of May, came away with it, finishing the top half of the field. Of course, everybody kind of looked at Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing and wondered if they'd be one of the cars that got bumped. But Louis Foster is learning these race cars, and he's learning them quickly, and I'm not really surprised by that as well, or at all, I should say. Of course, this is the advantage, Mark, of running it Indy Next by Firestone. You start to come to some of these tracks, and even though nobody gets a chance to test on street circuits like Detroit, the fact that Louis Foster has practice, qualifying race experience in Indy Next, I think it is very beneficial. So, yeah, I thought he had a good day yesterday, got to run quite a bit. Of course, the rookies get an extra set of tires, did a lot of running yesterday, and found himself in the top half of the field. So far, so good. It's been a good weekend for England's Louis Foster, the reigning Indy Next champion.
Yeah, I think for all intents and purposes, Davey, you get to the halfway point of the season, we're approaching that. I mean, I think they're rookies in name only. They've had plenty of seat time to that point, although, there may be tracks that, are new to them that they've not run, like Robert Schwartzman, for instance. But, for Foster, Rasmussen, Abel, they've been on these racetracks before, albeit not these cars.
I'll be right. And speaking speaking of that, look at Abel. He's 18th position right now. We talked about the driver, the only driver that missed the Indy 500. Tough weekend. They have a new engineer on that team, and 2 new engineers, I should say. And looks better already. And then you got the other car of his teammate VK in that 10th spot, showing speed out of that Del Coin Racing early on.
Well, when the cars come to the pit lane, Davey, I mean, the rear cowling comes off, and the cover comes off just below that aero screen, and doing a lot of work on those shocks and springs. Let's go to Nick Yeoman.
Mark, on my side of pit lane, that's exactly what we're seeing. I saw the bonnet off the front of Pato Award's car. They were making adjustments to the springs in the front of that car. Louis Foster, who we were just talking about, they're making spring adjustments to both the front and the rear. So looking across, Graham Rahal looks like a similar situation over there. So now that everybody's got a few laps and you've still got 31 minutes of practice time, now we're seeing a lot of these teams come down to pit lane, make some adjustments to try to dial in these setups with still plenty of track time available in their second practice.
And it looks like the grip level's starting to go up a little bit because the times are picking up a little bit. Herta, Rossi, Foster, Newgarden, Eilot the top 5. Kirkwood, Dixon, Power, McLaughlin, Erickson. Just a couple of minutes ago, Davey, we were in the 66 range, and now we're getting back toward where we were in that session yesterday. 62.933 is Herta's quick time.
Yeah, just about getting heat in these tires, getting back comfortable with the cars, the braking zone. And it just takes a little extra time. There's no question about it. And as Rossi, I seen him slow down to really get a good run on a lap, and he did just that, putting himself in that second spot right now at a 102.97, where Herta was in 102.93, almost on top of each other for that first and second position. But times are going to continue to fall, I promise you.
Is this one of those racetracks where when it's all said and done, these drivers may go look for their personal trainers and pat them on the back for putting them through the paces in terms of their upper body workouts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very, very physical around here. Another thing, a lot of these drivers use mouthpieces, mouth guards, because it's so bumpy around here. Just try to take some of the stress off the teeth, and you're just bouncing them. We don't know exactly how many man covers are around here. I think Joel said that maybe 217. He's heard of 215. But all I can tell you, there's a lot of them. And every time you hit one, it's a bump. But if you just watch right now, these cars going down this front straightaway, the asphalt, I mean, it is the roughest track we run on for sure.
Yeah, there's no question that the drivers are feeling it plenty because there's just not very many long, smooth sections of this racetrack.
Well, there's none. There's zero. Unless it's pit lane, the new pit lane, double wide pit lane they put in where these drivers are working both sides. Both sides, there's a double-sided pit lane, so cars on both sides of it. That's new, it's smooth, but as far as anywhere on this racetrack, there is no such thing.
Just got a camera shot of Billy Vincent. Talked to him during the Indianapolis 500 and back on the pit box as a race strategist for Marcus Armstrong. And every time Billy Vincent tries to walk away, they bring him right back to the fold.
Yeah, it does it well. I guess because he does too good of a job. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He does a good job at it, and he's back with Armstrong right now in that Meyer-Shank team. And anytime you're good, people want you, and that's the situation there.
Interesting to note about Meyer-Shank Racing, they made an announcement, and a member of their race team has been locked down as basically a guy to be their compliance officer and rules interpreter. And with those things making headlines over the past week and a half, that's probably a good proactive move by Meyer-Shank.
Yeah, it seems that things have changed in the IndyCar industry when it comes to tech. And, obviously Roger Penske with the attenuator situation at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, was caught with just actually smoothing a piece of carbon fiber in on the attenuator. It is a safety device. You're not supposed to mess with them. They were. I don't think it's a performance advantage at all, by the way. The air's already through the car. It's already done by the time it gets to that attenuator. But, man, the consequences with, losing jobs and fines. And then I hate to see post-race infractions. I like to see all the tech done before the races, so when the fan watches a race and it's over and they see somebody get first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever it may be, that's because they just ran the race with a legal car, and you don't have post-race infractions. Just hate to see that. 3 of the cars got post-race infractions. All of them, I have to say that I don't think any of them are performance enhancing either, to be really honest with you. So as we just see two cars side by side down there in turn one as one comes out of the pits, first time we've seen that, it just shows you how tight it is coming through this turn one.
It won't be the last time we see it.
No, it won't be the last time. They both, I think that was Malukas and Simpson that did that, and I think, you know, they both did a good job, but both slowed down a lot. You can see where two cars barely fit through there. Matter of fact, Malukas almost into that inside barrier, but makes it through. We're going to see more of that throughout this race, just depending on, especially green flag stops. If this race gets spread out, cars flying out of pit lane while the other cars are on the racetrack. It's not an easy one to merge. Like I said, they've done a great job with pit lane, having a double wide down there with the, you know, being so limited on room in downtown Detroit. They did a good job by that.
Let's go to Nick Yeoman.
Davey was just talking about pit lane, and I just had a good laugh down here on pit lane as an example as to how and why all these racetracks are not created equally. I just saw a couple members of the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan crew trying to adjust some wires. They look like Ethernet cables and maybe power cords to their computers, and to take up the slack, they were wrapping them around a light pole down here on pit lane, which of course you're not going to see at any temporary or permanent racetrack. So yeah, a lot of makeshift and working around the conditions here with these street circuits. It is a unique pit lane, there's no doubt. When they announced this race a couple years ago and you looked at the track map, you wondered how on earth are they going to fit 27 cars here on pit lane. But it is pretty cool, Mark, to see these cars on both sides of pit lane and the drivers and the teams adjusting to the elements of what you have down here, which are normally city streets and parking lots. And hey, sometimes you can use those light lamps and those poles to your advantage, I suppose.
And as we mentioned yesterday, Nick, I mean, if folks are in favor of this and they like it, then they're going to like it when the NTT IndyCar Series has the inaugural event in Texas next year.
Yeah.
It's going to be the very same setup.
That's right, and probably even better yet, because I think they have more room to work with, but you're exactly right. It works, and we questioned it, right? I mean, I did. I came down here at a media day, and I go, how is this even going to work? And seeing how tight it funneled out back on the racetrack, I thought, man, this is just doesn't look right. But I'll tell you, hats off to them. It does work. It works, you know, it's kind of equal for everybody, and they did a good job, and now we have it in Texas as well.
Well, Bud Dinger said we had 1,000 feet to work with, and this was the only way we could have moved this down here.
Very creative, you know, very creative on them doing that, and first times for everything, and you always question them and wonder, but give it a chance, and they made it work.
I guess the only other place you could have put pit lane with that much space is over on that backstretch, but then that would have narrowed that up too much.
Yeah, so there's probably areas over there that you could do it, but, you know, back to the same thing. Just getting pit equipment in your trucks and your transport.
Paddock and all that
has to go over there. Just it's crowded here. I'll say they just wait. You know, there's the IndyCar pits are spread all over, plus you got Indy Next here and the sports cars. We're packed in here, and you can just imagine it's downtown Detroit, so hard to find the area to be able to do all this.
Colton Herta continues P1, and he is looking at a minute 2:933. Alexander Rossi is second fastest. Again, Rossi will be parked the last 10 minutes of the session for being late to the weigh-in. Ritas VK with Michael Cannon on board. He's worked his way up to third fastest, then Louis Foster, then Joseph Newgarden. Callum Eilon is sixth fastest. Scott McLaughlin is seventh fastest. Kyle Kirkwood eighth. Robert Schwartzman was ninth. Santino Ferrucci 10th. Scott Dixon 11th. Will Power 12th. Marcus Ericsson 13th. Nolan Siegel 14th. Devlin DeFrancisco is 15th. Then Graham Rahal is 16th. Kiffin Simpson 17th. Christian Lundgaard is 18th rather. 19th is Jacob Abel. Rasmussen 20th. Rosenquist, Malukas, Connor Daly, Marcus Armstrong, Pato Award, and Alex Palou, interestingly left, Davey, currently running 27th, but he's only turned 3 laps. But you know he and Barry Wanzer have a plan.
Yeah, that's right. Only 3 laps to Palou, only 4 laps with Pato Award. 2 first and second place in the points championship are now 26th and 27th in this practice.
More on what's going on perhaps in the pit box with Alex Palou from Joel Sebastianelli.
Not too much more. Trying to track down a little bit more with Chip Ganassi Racing, but Alex Palou did just spend the last 5 minutes in here with the rear cowling off, going to work on that machine. As you said, Alex Palou mired in the back of the field right now, but they did just send the 10 back out on track.
Maybe Pato Award saw the video yesterday, Davey, because Will Power was was running in the same zone. He overcooked it a little bit into the turn and bumped it into the tire barrier.
Yeah, turn 3, got in just a little bit hot, a little bit wide, got in the tire barrier, broke that right front nose wing. That's why we've seen him go off twice. He went off down in turn 1. He went off down in turn 3. Back to the braking. Obviously, his braking bias is not the way he wants it. Sliding tires around on entry. I continue to talk about that. I think that is so important in this track because you use so much brake here, is to have your bias perfect to where when you do get on these brakes, they stop you straight, and then you have the opportunity to make the corner at that point.
Gosh, we're watching Scott Dixon right now work his way through the hairpin, and that backstretch just seems to go on forever.
It's a long one. It's long. And like I say, not relaxing. Like you go down the Indianapolis Motor Speedway straightaways, which I don't know if they're as long as these actually, or this one, but at least it's smooth. You can relax. You kind of, tune on your car, kind of get your surroundings, know who's in front of you, know who's behind you. Not here. This is a bumpy up and down. I mean, you are hanging onto that car even going straight.
Guess I didn't realize, and I don't know that it affects the balance of the race car much, but going from 1 to 2, you don't realize it when you're up on top of the garage, as I have been watching that little short straightaway from 1 to 2, but it does go uphill a little bit.
Yeah.
And then conversely, at the other end of the racetrack, when you go from 4 to 5, you're going back downhill.
That's right. That's the elevation change that you have here. And you have a little bit of a one between 7 and 8, but it's just the road kind of going up and down. But that is a bit of an elevation change. No question about it. You're driving up to that long straightaway.
Nick Yeoman had a sneak peek at the pit stop at Paddle Award.
Yeah, you guys said he had the issue into the tires. He brought that Arrow McLaren orange and black machine to pit lane. They gave it a look over and a thumbs up. No significant damage. So Paddle Award's back out there for practice.
Scott Dixon almost stealth-like, and how consistent he's been to the weekend so far. He currently, Davey, checks in as 7th fastest.
7th fast. Well, it's changed as we talked about. Promise is going to get faster. 102.53 now. That's Ericsson on top. Foster, Rossi, Herta, VK. And that Dale Coyne car, we continue to talk about new engineering over there, top 5 right now. And he just went to P4. Another good lap by VK. So good run by him. And then you got Newgarden, Simpson, Dixon, Rasmussen, and how about Eilert with that Prema team in top 10?
Christian Rasmussen currently 9th fastest. He and his teammate Alexander Rossi in the top 10. And Joel, I know you caught up with Christian after the session yesterday, and he talked about all the challenges of the street circuit here in Detroit.
It's tough. I don't think you're going to find anybody, even the guys who love coming here, who will tell you that things come easy on the streets of Detroit. Scott Dixon also said that yesterday. Like, yeah, he won last year, but this is a tough place to come to. Christian Rasmussen was 13th quickest with Ed Carpenter Racing. Said they found some things. Both he and Alexander Rossi were happy after yesterday, but it's just a challenge. I mean, they spent about an hour after the practice session just going through all of the data, trying to find any extra edge. The challenge for them and really for everybody, as it often is when we come to these street circuits, is you never know what you're going to get in qualifying. Sometimes that window to put one lap in is tight. That's all that you're going to get. So they know that they're going to need to be on it, not just quick, but when that opportunity comes, you got to be quick for that one lap. Christian Rasmussen and the Ed Carpenter Racing guys feeling pretty good, and that's true for Alexander Rossi as well.
Just going to ask you to kind of recap your debriefs once upon a time when you were driving for A.J. Foyt. I don't imagine that looking at data was a lot of that, since we have well-documented proof and video evidence of A.J.'s disdain for laptop computers.
Yeah. It was him sitting on that A-arm talking to you. That was, and you give him the information. That was a computer. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, times have changed for sure, because I remember, several years ago, Zach Veach from year 1 to year 2 with Andretti at the time. I remember Zach telling me that the primary focus of the offseason was going through and pouring over all of the data from all of the racetracks that he'd raced upon, because he really wanted to see where and what tracks and on those tracks where he needed to get better.
Yeah, and that's part of being teammates. Another good thing, you can actually find out what every other team did as well.
Yeah.
They got programs out there that you can see what car, doesn't matter what team you're with, who's fast, where they're at, what's the throttle position, what's the steering location. So it's really out there for everybody to have knowledge from. Matter of fact, it's even in IndyNext right now. My son's getting ready to do some IndyNext, and they've already been pouring over last year's data at the tracks he's going to, just seeing throttle traces, steering inputs, where they need to be. And it's amazing how much knowledge you can get right now.
What races will we see him in Indy next?
So all the ovals. He's going to run all the rest of the ovals. So he starts at St. Louis here coming up next, and then he'll run Iowa, Milwaukee, and Nashville.
So Nick Yeoman, I just want to give you a word of warning. You and I watched from the press box at Gateway a couple of years ago, that Silver Crown race. So if Davey's sitting next to you, Nick, as a driver analyst, and DJ's in contention late, you might have to strap him to his chair.
Yeah, I remember being up in the booth looking down on pit lane, and I think you and I both said, who is that lunatic down there that can't stand still, that's walking, pacing back and forth, looks like he was a nervous wreck, and of course it was a proud pop about to see his son win a race. So yeah, I think we're all pretty excited to see how Davey Jr. does it next.
Yeah, you're right. I definitely wore the pavement out down there, walking back and forth. And it's a feeling I can't explain. I didn't have it when I raced, obviously, or watching my dad race. But when your kid's out there and you know that he's learning, right, and it's new, and he's learning all these things and how to drive race cars, it's nerve-wracking for sure.
I know that this is a vastly different animal, but my son is a high school football coach. And when they win, I'm happier for him than I ever was when I won. And when they lose, I feel worse than I ever did when I lost.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That's the way it is. And I think that's with every father in anything. And
I've talked to drivers whose sons have raced. The late Larry Rice was one, and he told me, he said, I hated watching it. I really did, because he said, I felt like when I was driving, I had control.
Yeah.
And that changed everything about it for me.
That's it right there, because you don't think about all that. You're out there, you're taking care of business, you're in control. And but boy, watching it's just the worst. Matter of fact, he's racing the sprint car tonight, and I'm busy, and I don't see 80% of his races. So the ones that I do see, I'm not over that part of it yet. So.
Nick Yeoman and I talked a little bit about Louis Foster earlier, another former Indy Next driver that is doing very, very well. Is Christian Rasmussen. He has worked his way up to P1, and Louis Foster's teammate Devlin DiFrancesco is now third fastest, as we see the Sexton Properties machine of Santino Ferrucci been kind of a struggle for him this weekend. He's caught in one of the runoff areas that he's trying to get that car going in the right direction and get it back underway. And while we keep an eye on him, expect him to do just that very, very soon. We'll check in on pit lane with Joel Sebastianelli, who has an update on Alex Palou.
Alex Palou is just having a rough go of it. They've got the rear cowling off and the front cowling off, making adjustments. Had a quick chat with Barry Wanzer, and he just shrugged and said sometimes it's a lot tougher than you want it to be. HRC is over here assisting as well, and it's one of those deals where it's kind of shocking, because we're not used to seeing Alex Palou have a hard time with anything in IndyCar this season. But that is what these practice sessions are for, and Chip Ganassi Racing, by the looks of it, throwing the kitchen sink at the attempt.
14 minutes remaining in this session. Christian Rasmussen is P1. Marcus Ericsson, Devlin DiFrancesco, Alexander Rossi, and Colton Hurd of the top 5. Renus VK up to 6th. Foster, Newgarden, Ilott, Simpson in the top 10. And Davey, don't get me wrong. I know we have stars like Palou and Newgarden and Power and McLaughlin and those. I got to be honest with you, though. For me, especially, and I don't wish any ill will among anyone, but it is kind of cool to look up at timing and scoring and see a Rasmussen and a DiFrancesco and a VK and a Louis Foster and Ilott in the top 10.
No, I totally agree. And don't forget Simpson. He's kind of been quiet right now.
That's right.
Simpson, we didn't know where he was going to land. We see he's with Ganassi. It's like, man, he's with two of the best drivers ever with that team, and where's he going to land? But I give a lot of credit. That's Simpson. He's came a long way. He's doing well. And as you just said, seeing some of these other drivers have that opportunity. How about DiFrancesco? As you said, P3 right now. Ran great at Indy as well in that Ray Hall Letterman landing a car. And Rasmussen on top of the Ed Carpenter Racing, or ECR. I messed that name up. Went from Ed Carpenter to ECR. But how about Siegel struggling this year a little bit in that 14th spot? So there, it's mixed up. And then you got the guy second in the points championship we're talking about that needs every point they can get. He's right now last place, 27th right now, Pato O'Ward.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, Davey, with 12 minutes remaining in the session. We wondered about the implementation of the alternate tires. Will Power talked about yesterday, in case you missed it when we discussed it earlier, that it appears as though that the alternates, for all intents and purposes, are the preferred tire this weekend. And so far, we've yet to see anybody employ the use of those, although they might over the last 10 minutes of this session.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here. Good point. Not knowing if they're going to try to save those for the race and qualifying, or what's going on here. But right now, I did see Foster, I think, just for briefly had some on his car when he went out. Palou right now, we're going to see what Palou really has. This is the first time I've seen him on track with no traffic in front of him. But right now he sits in that 22nd position. Our Indy 500 winner, our points champion, the guy that's won majority of the races this year, all but one actually, got second in. Right now is, I think, a good indicator of where he is at speed because nobody's in front of him.
Root sponsorship on the car, the 66 machine, and we did see it make contact with the outside retaining wall. Marcus Armstrong brings it to the pit lane and gets a look-see. They put a set of fresh Firestone Firehawks on it because I think that Firestone logo was pretty well scraped off of it. And as strong and as durable as these suspension pieces are, let's face it, Davey, if you hit them the right way and just the right lick, you're going to do some damage.
Yeah, you're right. It's amazing that Dallara builds such a strong race car, and especially when it comes to the suspension on these really rough racetracks. But they're strong in some areas, but some areas they're not, as we see cars doing it again, slowing down to that timeline. Dixon had to jump out of the throttle on his fast lap, and I'm not so sure that Palou didn't have to as well. He even had clean track in front of him, but then to come around that last corner, all of a sudden they're stacked up there, so he did not get that lap we were hoping to see.
Live and breathe the definition of a concrete canyon, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and it's a concrete canyon. When you say that, meaning concrete walls all the way around this facility. I think about half this track is concrete and the other half is asphalt. I mean, it's really a mixture of both, and asphalt it seems to have more grip than the concrete does. As we're going uphill right now on an in-car with Scott Dixon going into turn 2 onto that long straightaway, and you can see the bump start immediately as soon as they got on that front straightaway. Just watch that wheel, and man, it's bumpy down there.
Back to Joel Sebastianelli.
Just a funny scene from down here on pit road. I have seen twice now over at Ed Carpenter Racing and Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing his tires get taken off the cars. Crew members put their hands over to try to warm up their hands. It is 53 degrees. It is still cloudy, and it's pretty chilly. I don't know if Davy's phone app will tell you this, but I think if you put your hand over the tires like that, it adds about 5 degrees to the feels-like temperature.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, that's some good heat right there off them brakes. I promise you, the tires, the brakes, there's some nice heat coming off the engine, like being around a campfire.
Yeah, you improvise for sure. I mean, there's no wind in the booth.
Yeah, it's pretty nice inside here. And I don't want to say anything to the guys outside, but
yeah,
pretty good.
This was one of those times, once upon a time, as I was in the pit lane, that I actually didn't mind wearing Noma for the fire suit.
That's right, yeah.
It actually came in handy, warmed it up a little bit. We talked about Louis Foster and his prowess early and how well this weekend is going for him off I think, a serviceable Indianapolis 500. And Davey, late Louis Foster has gone to P1 in this session.
Sure has. How about that rookie and that Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan? We can just talk about his teammate, Di Francesco, in that 4th spot right there. Good run by him as well. Car is it's moving around. Lundgaard, he jumps up. You haven't talked about him. I think he's 3rd place in the championship right now. He's 3rd place on the scoring chart. Just put a good lap in. Ericsson shoots up to that 4th spot. Right now, Newgarden and Power, 6th and 7th. First we've seen anything of the Penske cars in this session.
So it's Foster, Rasmussen. By the way, that fast speed is at a 62.169. So we're still a ticker two slower from where we were yesterday in the session. Kyle Kirkwood was the fastest at a 61.7509, but I think maybe he may have turned that time on the alternates.
Yeah, that's right. He did have the alternate. He was one of the ones that had the alternates on. Don't see anybody with those on right now as we speak. Rosenquist in that 66 car, I'm sorry, the 60 car, still having some issues. Still bottom of the charts, 27th quick. Daly and Stingray Robb right in front of him. And then Abel Palou, another one, still in 23rd right now. Whoops, that just moved. Where'd he go? How about this? P6.
Yep.
Right there. There you go. He finally got a lap in. Nobody stacked him up down there in the final corners.
Final turn. Robert Schwartzman went off into the runoff area. The pole sitter from the Indy 500. He has got things going in the right direction, and it's been a bit of a struggle for them to find speed. He's 20th fastest, and we see Alexander Rossi out of his car, and he is debriefing with the crew because, as we mentioned, missed the way in, and because of that, he was parked the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, found himself on top of the charts for quite a while. Now is in that 10th position, right in front of VK, Herta, Malukas, and Ilott. They round out that top 14, the left side of our page, I should say. still surprised about 2 cars. That's Rosenquist and Ferrucci. I just thought Ferrucci would have a little bit more. And, you know, Graham Rahal is back there in that 23rd spot, where his teammates right now are 1st and 6th. And Graham did such a great job at the Indy Road Course. I mean, I thought he was going to win that race. What an outstanding run he had, but he can't find the speed here for some reason.
A little bit later on this morning, 11:30 Eastern, complete coverage of Indy Next qualifying as we will set the field for the race this weekend. Nick Yeoman will give us a preview. And Nick, that final practice session for them this morning, the runoff areas were probably the busiest portions of the racetrack.
Yeah, I am very happy to see that this IndyCar session has been quite a bit cleaner, because there were drivers in the runoff area really from the start of the green flag to the checkered flag during that Indy Next by Firestone practice. Some guys testing it 3, 4, 5, 6 times. No surprise, the fastest was Dennis Hauger. He has won 3 of 4 races so far this season. Kyle Collette looks like he's within striking distance. He's got to get his season jump started, as Hauger and Lockie Hughes have kind of jumped ahead to a nice lead. Those are the only 2 drivers that have won races so far this season, but Collette had a podium here a year ago. He ended up 2nd quick. So going to be fascinating, Mark. It is, throughout the course of this practice session, I feel like it's gotten a tick warmer. Not a whole lot. That might be because the wind feels like it's died down just a little bit, but going to be fascinating to watch those 20 drivers in Indy Next by Firestone. They've got a split qualifying session, half the field in one session, half the field in the other. It'll be interesting to see if anybody can knock off Dennis Hauger. Lockie Hughes has been pretty quick. Kyle Collette as well, with qualifying just about an hour from now.
A little hint of sunshine making itself known with a little bit of cloud break here and there. And, you know, you talk about that championship and how dominant Hauger has been early on. I'll have to say, Davey, what kind of makes that championship a bit more compelling than the NTT IndyCar Series is Lockie Hughes is, you know, the race he's not won. He's kind of finished on the podium, so he's right there with his striking distance.
Yeah, not letting Hauger get away from him by any stretch, winning one of the races at Indy, and still knocking on that door. And even though it seems like Hauger's really dominated, which he has, but boy, Lockie right behind him is doing a good job.
5 minutes remaining in this session, and Louis Foster continues to be the fastest. And Davey, it looks like that they're either saving the alternates for qualifying, or they're going to save them for the race tomorrow, because we haven't seen anybody employing them in this session. So
and here's the way I'm thinking that I'm looking at it is they're going to use 3 sets up for qualifying. Then they were issued 5 over the weekend. Right. They used 1 yesterday. So I'm thinking that, hey, they're saying, as we see Schwartzman just put some on, that, man, these are going to be the tire for the race. Let's keep a fresh set for that and not worry about here. But sometimes it changes the balance of the car. I don't think it's going to change too much here, because you really have the high-speed corners that it really affects with that softer tire. It's back to what I continue to talk about. Braking and acceleration coming off the corners, not getting tire spin, are the 2 key things around this racetrack.
So as we mentioned before, you know, through 1 and 2, you want to be strong there to take advantage of that back straightaway. But where else do you need to be really fast and smooth here? You
know, and I think going into 8, I think that's our timeline's right there. It's bumpy. Try to get through turn 8 really well. The rest of it, you need to have speed for qualifying, obviously, but to hold cars behind you, turns 4, 5, 6, 7, pretty easy to do that.
Joe Sebastianelli's caught up with Alexander Rossi.
15th for now, with the session still in progress. All odds subject to change. Alexander, where do you feel like the car is right now?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's, obviously Christian's quick, and, our session ended early, so we were a bit out of sequence. But, no, it's pretty good.
How big a difference do those few minutes make?
I didn't hear that, what?
How big a difference do those few minutes not being in the car make?
Doesn't matter.
All right, we wish you the best of luck in qualifying. Thank you.
That is a deep and thorough answer by Alexander Rossi. It doesn't matter. But I guarantee you that if it weren't for that 10-minute penalty, he'd be out there.
Yeah, well, it does matter. It does matter, because, you want to be in that car and know what the track's going to be like later in these runs, as we see Plo really lock up that left front, getting down into turn 3 hard down into there. So that's not going to be a good lap. But and then you always want to see yourself on top of the chart, just to know you got the very best out of your car against everybody else, just to see where you're at. And even though he knows his car's good, his teammate seems to be good, but right now he's a P17. That's Rossi that we're talking about. Knowing that he's out there right now, he can lay it down and just see where he's at. So they give you time for a reason, and boy, one car really slow there. Oh, that was
DeFrancesco. Yep.
Yeah, just really off pace.
Oh, McLaughlin barely missed that outside wall.
Yeah, that was close as well.
So Colton Herta, Scott McLaughlin are taking turns late in the session, P1. It was McLaughlin, then Herta, then McLaughlin, then Herta. Now it's Herta. And now, Davey, even on the primaries, we're getting into the area where Kirkwood was yesterday.
Yeah, 61.
The 61.782.
Yeah.
McLaughlin's second fastest. Kyle Kirkwood, Louis Foster, Christian Rasmussen, Christian Lundgaard, Felix Rosenqvist, Ray Hall, Eilot, and Ericsson in the top 10. Pillow up to 11th fastest. Malukas, Newgarden, DeFrancesco, and VK. Dixon, Power, Rossi, Simpson, and Siegel through 20th. 21st is Ferrucci. Award is 22nd. 23rd is Armstrong. Schwartzman, the only one of the alternates in this session, is 24th fastest. Then Jacob Abel, Stingray Robb, and Connor Daly. So a good session for Andretti Andretti Global. All
yeah, we just talked about, you know, 2 cars going away, and they just seem to be struggling. Ray Hall was one of those. He jumps up to the 9th spot. Rosenqvist was 27th. There was the other one. He's now 6th. So no worries. They were just back there figuring out whatever they had to do, leaving Daly and Robb on the bottom of the chart with that team. You know, obviously their teammates over there with Uncos, Ollinger Racing, and just don't seem to have the speed this weekend. Robb does just jump ahead of Abel right there, jumps from that 26th spot to the 25th spot, but definitely not where they want to be, as we see Rinus VK off the course down there in turn 8.
He might be second. No, it looks like that he was able to get that car back going. Yeah, into turn number 3, goes into the runoff area, and that thing is pretty narrowed down. And it takes, you know, like I said, it takes the Austin Powers 20-point turn on the pole car to be able to get that thing turned around.
And we got Schwartzman off, kind of, he backed up, doing the same thing right here in turn 1. Actually, just looked over right in front of us. And he's got going against Schwartzman on those alternate tires, shot up to that P17 overall with the alternate tires, but still not that great.
And we've mentioned those manhole covers. There are 2 right in the apex of that turn.
Yeah, there sure are. They're everywhere. I mean, they're just scattered around. And turn 3, I mean, you go over to 1, you can see because all the steam coming out of it. When you come around there, it's like a fire that you're running over because all the smoke coming out of that manhole cover. So it's definitely a challenge. I mean, we continue to say that these drivers with walls on both sides like that, it is tough.
How much leeway do you have in terms of that ride height to compensate for that?
You know, that you kind of guess at it going on, but you know, because these engineers are going, okay, we put bump stops, which you could do. You put bump stops on the car to where it just doesn't allow it to bottom out, but it's like a go-kart at that point, and it's not working on suspension. It's just working on these bump stops. Or you get the car raised high enough to accept those bumps, and I promise you that's a lot of what these teams are doing out there, is getting the ride heights correct.
Yeah, so Rinus VK and Will Power come off of that final turn, kind of side by side. They end up nose to tail as we see everybody dispatched to that dual pit lane as this session has come to a close. We'll give the full field rundown. Colton Herta was the fastest at a 61.7823. Scott McLaughlin at a 61.8995. Kyle Kirkwood at a 61.9423. Then Eilot and Foster in the top 5. Felix Rosenqvist 6th fastest. Rasmussen 7th. 8th Lundgaard. 9th Ray Hall. 10th Ericsson. 11th Dixon. 12th Pillow. 13th Malukas. Devlin DeFrancesco was 14th. Joseph Newgarden is 15th. Rinus VK 16th. Robert Schwartzman 17th. Will Power 18th. Rossi 19th. Simpson is 20th. Nolan Siegel 21st. Ferrucci 22nd. Award 23rd. Armstrong 24th. Jacob Abel 25th. Connor Daly 26th. Stingray Robb is 27th. Indy Next qualifying comes your way at 11:30 Eastern this morning, and then at 12:20 this afternoon. INDYCAR quals. Kind of an early end of the day for us because there is essentially what boils down to a sprint race for IMSA a little bit later on today.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be done after we got 2 sessions left. We got Indy Next qualifying, then right into INDYCAR qualifying, and this is their last chance. So hopefully they got what they needed. We see, you know, obviously the Andretti Global cars, Kirkwood fastest yesterday, Herta fastest today, teammates, and it seems like they had the best car on the street course again.
Bottom line is this, getting into the round of 12 may not be enough because of how valuable track position here. You're really going to want to be in that fast 6.
You really want, I mean, I think to have an opportunity to win this race. Now, strategy could play a part, and I haven't really worked it up yet, but knowing where the fuel mileage is going to be, and if he could do some strategy calls, which, if I recall, Dixon did do some of that last year to win this race, and then just, you know, the mess up and having accidents.
Scott McLaughlin, good session for him. Nick Yeoman, he's P2.
Yeah, me and one of the photographers was just admiring how pristine and white this beautiful new fire suit is. Looks nice.
Oh, yeah, not for long. You should have seen my one from yesterday. It was dirty as, but yeah, no, look, I'm very happy in the tire rack Chevy. Car feels great. the last couple of days have been so good for my mind, you know, just get back in the car and get going, and I'm just having a blast out here.
This racetrack, were you able to find, I mean, obviously the lap time looked good, but how hard was it to find a clean lap? Was it a challenge as much as it was yesterday?
The clean lap wasn't too bad for me. I had a good spot, but it's a temperature. It's so cold and really difficult to get these tires up, and I think everyone's struggling with it. Like, you know, I'm doing my fastest lap on my lap 10. You know, it's kind of crazy. So, but same for everyone. Just see how we go.
All right, good luck in qualifying. That's Scott McLaughlin. Mark, of course, trying to shake off the disappointment of Indianapolis. Sounds like he is in a good mood. Could be a threat for pole later today as he ends up second.
I think I saw a story about all of that. For those of you that don't know, crashed out, you know, before we ever got to the green flag of the 500, and nobody was harder on Scott McLaughlin than Scott McLaughlin. And I think, if I remember right, Davey, he got back to the bus, and the baby was there, and his wife was there, and he said the timing of that couldn't have been better.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when things bad happen, family always comes to your side, and that was a great thing with his wife and kid there. And you know, that's a tough one. That's the first lap of the Indy 500. Well, the warm-up lap.
I just feel like mentally, and with his disposition and his approach to things, if there's anybody capable of rebounding quickly from the disappointment, it's Scott McLaughlin.
Yeah, we say, hey, we're back in. I'm having a blast. Let's get after it. It's behind him already. That's the biggest race in the world. But you know what? You got to shake it off. In the day, it's hard to tell yourself this, but that is just another race. It just happens to be the biggest one in the world.
You have a little bit of experience at putting adversity behind you, let's say that. Kyle Kirkwood, third fastest, Joel.
Doesn't seem like a lot of adversity, but we never know until we talk to him. P1 yesterday, P3 in this practice session. What do you feel like you found so far this afternoon?
Quite honestly, nothing. We're still fast, which is a good thing. I think our performance on the green tires, the alternates, are a little bit better than the primary tires, if I'm being honest. But yeah, it's still very fast. The time's in it. Just tenth and a half off of my teammate. I have no problems with that. I think that's perfectly fine. P3 right now. Man, it's tough to get a lap out there, and with as many cars that are on track, with how slow you go, it's hard to even just get tire temps. So that's what everyone's struggling for out there right now. Which we assume won't be a thing in qualifying, especially with the alternate tires. But it was a thing here this morning, so it was tough conditions to try and learn anything.
We've seen you pick up a win earlier this year in Long Beach. How much are you able to carry over from that circuit to here?
Not a whole lot. I mean, it is a street course, and we are good at street courses, but Long Beach is a different animal. This place is so bumpy. It's so slow. Every single corner is slow, and it's all just 90s. So in a lot of ways, it's a lot different, but I guess the tendency is that we're really good at street courses, so I guess we have that going for us, and that's the only takeaway, really.
Kyle Kirkwood in really good position in the Andretti Global, number 27.
Key sounds to me like Davey is going to be balanced for the race car, but it's interesting to note that Scott McLaughlin said he didn't turn his fastest lap until lap 10. That's crazy to plan for.
Yeah, and I think that had changed somewhat with the alternate tire. I do feel that. And they do have some time, to the way they do the groups, to go out there and cut a few laps. So I do think we'll see times fall. And with that alternate tire, even though the heat doesn't come in at really any quicker, the grip is better.
Break for us until 11:30 Eastern time, then any next qualifying, and then we'll have complete coverage of knockout qualifying on the Firestone Fast 6 coming your way at 12:20 Eastern time this afternoon. Our on-site engineer and producer is Rick Evans. The director of IndyCar Radio is Chris Pollock. Master control operations at our Indianapolis studios, courtesy of Corbin Lingenfelter. Joel Sebastianelli, Nick Yeoman handling things like pit road this morning. For our driver analyst, Davey Hamilton, this is Mark Jane. So long for now. From the Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix, presented by Lear.